I'm William Shatner. I've done a lot of things in my career, but this takes the cake. This is so cool. You, Joseph, today, it's all about you. You won the internet. Congratulations. It's exciting. It makes me want to celebrate. Makes me want to get up out of this chair. Makes me want to sing. Makes me want to dance. Makes me want to shout. Kick my heels up. Throw my hands up. Toss my head back. No, really, people should be shouting your name in the street.
Come on now. Sing that name.
Sing that song.
Joseph,
Sing it out loud.
Joseph.
I want to celebrate. Put it up in lights.
The internet belongs to you.
See, no one else deserves to be celebrated like you because you are the best.
Joseph Jaffe is not famous. Me, Tom Arnold, I am very famous. I absolutely like, because it's very true. Like, I hadn't freaking heard of you until I sitting on a Friday night. This is how bad my life is. Listen, fucker, good luck. Good luck with your rebranding. Like anybody knew what the name was before. What was the name? Okay, who gives a shit? That's a good name because it's got your name in it. You can pretend you're humble. You say, I'm not famous. And, which you aren't. So you're just not being anyway, but I hope you get famous doing this. Good luck to you.
Am I being overconfident? Am I becoming complacent about complacency?
I think you are.
Oh, he's not the Messiah, he's just a very naughty boy.
Yeah, I've got big ears.
Brian doesn't want to see anyone now. Piss off!
That's the one, because you literally complete me, and we complete each other.
You've obviously encountered discrimination in your own life by virtue of being Australian.
Hey, Manuel Kant was a real pissant who was very rarely stable.
I don't want to get too gushy, but I might just be saying you complete me, Dean. PNG now stands for Pritchard and Good.
Branding is not a bad blind date.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're
How
insane!
Did I do that?
You're insane!
Are you ready? Are you ready to be outrageous today? Because whether you are or not, it's too goddamn bad because you are in the right place at the right time or the wrong place at the wrong time. It doesn't matter. Just sit back and relax because I can't even pronounce his name. But if I had to, if my life depended on it, and I might actually be struck down, it's Patrick Olszowski. Patrick Olszowski. Just call me Patrick. Just call me Pat. And just call me Joe. But we're going to talk about board games. We're going to talk about culture. We're going to talk about workplace. We're going to talk about pumpkins. We're going to talk about whatever the hell he wants to talk about. Because, when you have the word outrageous in the background, there is only one direction, and that is down. It is a race to the bottom, my friends. And I have a feeling I'm going to win. Just kidding. It is 2024. And as I'm doing in, I was joking when I was recording yesterday. I was like, well, some people call it dry January. And then I said, well, maybe I should be calling it cry January. But the reality is it's actually why January. It's why January. What is your why? This is my why. As a teacher, facilitator, and coach, I help high aspiring entrepreneurs, owners, and their leadership teams get unstuck, return to growth, and become forever changed. So I challenge you to come up with your why in January. I've also just published my 6th book called Forever Changed, How a Global Pandemic Changed My Direction, My Purpose, and My Life. And hot off the press. And I'm talking about hot off the press, so hot that I can barely even sit down. I actually, yesterday, produced my own GPT. So there is now a Forever Changed GPT. And if you just go to bit.ly, bit.ly/Forever Changed GPT, you can actually interact with, I guess, an automated version an artificially intelligent version of me that will help you love what you do, be true to yourself, and stay the course and become forever changed. I'm also coaching. I'm doing business and leadership coaching with EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, as a teacher, facilitator, and a coach. I just want to make sure, because one thing that Pat says to me, and he is I completely agree with him. It's in the book. Life is short. Life is short. In fact, you could be here today and gone tomorrow. So if today was your only day, if today was your last day, if today was your best day, would it have been worthwhile? The answer has to be every single day, yes. Can't get it right every time, but we need to get it right more often than we get it wrong. I want to know that if you spent an hour with me today, it was worth your while. And if you did, and you enjoy the conversation, just go to bit.ly/subscribe to the show to subscribe to the show. My bit.lys are very literal, are they not? Also, every Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I do an audio first, audio only, because they tell me I have a face for radio, and they are correct. Session in the Collective Cafe. It's virtual coffee, but real connection and conversation. Please come and swing by one day. We hang out in Discord. We hang out in Spaces on X. And we've had some amazing sessions lately, like talking about crazy, wily Elon Musk. Does he know what he's doing, and does he care? And the answer is no and no. And does he know exactly what he's doing, and should we care? And again, the answer is, in this particular case, yes and yes. We also did a beautiful session the other day on psychological safety. And I have a feeling we might even get to that today with Patrick. And if you can't attend live, please go ahead and join us on the pod version on demand. And you can subscribe to that at bit.ly/collective cafe to go. But enough about me. Let's talk about something that is always connected to my guest, an homage to my guest. Today's seated soliloquy is called Board Games. Now, you will notice that there is a little bit of a typo because, as you know, you don't spell games, G-A-M-E-S. Just kidding. But why did I call it board games? I think because at the end of the day, we are bored into submission. We are underwhelmed with life. We are underwhelmed with corporate meetings. We're even sometimes even underwhelmed with games themselves. Games are meant to be fun. Games are meant to test. Games are meant to allow us not to take ourselves so seriously. Perhaps we should do the same in the boardroom. They call it the board of directors. They call it the boardroom. But how much of it is in fact a board versus boring versus vanilla versus mediocre, middle of the road, satisfactory? I always love the fact that we say customer satisfaction, but the word satisfaction comes from the word satisfactory. Do we want to be satisfactory in life? Every day when we return from our boardroom in our three-piece suit, does anyone actually wear that anymore? They don't, but doesn't matter. And we return home. Do we go from one boardroom to another boardroom? Or in fact, can we bring with a spark, a zest, something new, something that allows us to look at the world slightly differently, maybe with a different perspective, to find joy, to find inspiration, to find motivation, to be able to go at it again the next day, maybe look at things slightly differently, solve a problem, solve a puzzle, and actually have fun doing it? Because at the end of the day, is it not about fun? Isn't it? Well, now someone who epitomizes the word fun is Patrick. It's the last time I say it. Olszowski. I'm getting better at it. Let me tell you a little bit about the man, the myth, the legend. Patrick is the founder of Outrageous Insight. They work with global businesses to train, motivate, and support their staff to build rockstar products, not duds. Want to know what working with Outrageous feels like? Well, imagine TEDx meeting Ted Lasso for a coffee at work. They believe that teams, even in the world's largest organizations, learn more when laughing. And I think I'm just going to have to ask him now, Pat, can you cry as well? But if you're crying, if those tears are joy, does that count as well? Laughing and crying? Welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot. 100% it counts. I just had to Google who the fuck is Tom Arnold because I'd never heard of that motherfucker. And he was like, but I'm famous. And I was thinking, no, you're not. I've never heard of you. So, Tom, seriously, my friend, don't just go doing down our wonderful host, our mentor, our spiritual guide, our emissary, our emir, our sort of Batman here. This is not the way to start the show. And there he was, just bringing bad vibes, Joe. I couldn't get over him. He was a bit up himself. Was that a cameo? Was it? Was that like a sort of get him to record a sort of thing?
I'm pleading the fifth. I don't know what you're talking about, but I will tell you one thing. He nailed the brief.
Did he?
Because he said, "I like the name. It's humble and it says you're not famous, which you want." So he then realized that he was in on the joke himself. It's actually a vicious cycle. It's like a I don't know, a dog or a cat chasing its own tail.
100%. And in fact, my brother got have you ever watched Below Decks, the Bravo TV series about the sort of mega yachts? And the captain on that is called Captain Lee. And my brother in fact got Captain Lee to do a sort of a message for a friend of his. And honestly, you just sort of go like, these B-grade celebrities just bringing in extra dollar, Joe, through these series. And I understand on legal advice, on the advice of counsel, you've decided that you can neither confirm nor deny the existence of a service called Cameo. But seriously, Tom Arnold, my friend, do one.
I still don't know what you're talking about.
Do one, Tom Arnold. Oh yeah, and never call me Pat, because a Pat is something that comes out the back of a cow.
There you go. So Patrick it is, and you can, remember the history of the world? What's it? You look like the piss boy, and you look like a bucket of shit. So I just basically say, I don't care what you call me, as long as you call me Joe or Joseph. Patrick, it is already outrageous. But what we're gonna do is I'm gonna give you two choices. We can either just fly and fling ourselves into two truths and a lie to figure out, what kind of a fibber you are, or we could do a little bit of a role play, which is destined to go down as a terrible idea, which is what if, in fact, TEDx met Ted Lasso? What's your choice? Pick your poison.
I'm less ready. You're gonna have to warm me up a bit, Joe. I don't just go from first date to role play and sort of shibari knot work on the first chat. So let's ease our way into this, my friend. Let's go for some two truths and a lie while I rack my increasingly sort of ravaged brain to try and work out which ones I said.
Well, listen, the beautiful thing about it is when you are a pathological liar, you don't even know which one the liar is, which is not to say you are. Maybe that's your truth. Maybe that's your lie. I'm a pathological liar.
Oh God, this is getting quite bleak and skirting sort of legal niceties already. 13 minutes into the show. This is
all right.
Exactly what I was promised. So I'm excited.
Well, listen, Patrick. We went into the depths of your past, of your background, and we found out 3 items, 2 of which we know for a fact are true, and one of them is probably a lie. The first one that we found out is that you participated.
Joe, before we go any further, I'm just finding it really creepy, the big head picture of me. It's like, I almost wish we could get a sort of billboard with my face, quite low resolution like this, and even bigger, because I've even got no neck in this one, which is disturbing me even more.
You know what? We have such an incredible production budget here. And so much and so many staffers that often, and premium subscription to every Photoshop.
To Microsoft Paint.
Exactly.
It's literally right up there with Microsoft Paint. It's great. I feel like I've basically been painted in Minecraft.
Listen, listen. You're a young man, but I remember. In fact, I was in South Africa over December, January, and I found a manual. I should have kept it, and I threw it out, and now I'm regretting it. For Harvard Graphics, Harvard Graphics was the premium. Before there was PowerPoint, there was Harvard Graphics. So the little
Yeah, you see,
gloss.
I grew up with a Commodore 64 and an Atari, and
Okay, then you're my age. You're 25.
exactly, like literally sort of early 30s, but like the tape. And I remember being really sad when we left the cassette tape sort of format and moved to 5.25-inch discs. That just felt like a real sadness. I'm also the man that as a child cried when our telephone number went from 362 to 750 362. I was just like, this is too much change. Break the machine, Joe. It was too much.
I'll tell you, we our home phone number used to be 445554, and then they changed it to 4345544. The other thing, and we will get back. Can we ever get back? We can never get back.
We're never going back. Once you've
Hey,
gone
listen.
forward, you can never go back.
You know what they say? Once you go pat, you can't go back. So anyway,
I've
what I
never
was
heard that.
trying
Is that a thing?
what I was trying to say was in South Africa, we used to call them floppy disks and stiffy disks. And that is a true story.
I
So
love that. And you know, where I grew up, which was obviously very working class, as you can hear from my cut glass public school sort of son of empire accent. If you got an invitation to a party, we would call it a stiffy because it would come on stiff card. Joe, I mean, literally, I've lost your entire audience here, so I apologise for my inappropriate use of sort of 100 GSM reference there. But yeah,
this seems like a good opportunity to promote your LinkedIn then. So
my Ratner moment. Yeah, let's keep going. This is good. I'm loving it, Joe.
all right. So necklace aside, tell us about how you participated in an episode of Undercover Boss, going incognito within a major corporation to understand frontline employee challenges and to gain insights for your training programs.
Exactly. So I basically spent time on the shop floor inside a McDonald's franchise. And yeah, it was quite eye-opening. Got to understand the sort of very different motivations of staff, saw the sort of different work practices, even though we were supposed to all the crew are supposed to be working to an absolutely regimented sort of manual. Wasn't necessarily the case, and gave me a new appreciation for the wonderful teammates and colleagues that I had there.
You know, there's something really beautiful about the actual series Undercover Boss, where you have the CEO, the founder, the owner of a company putting on this really bad disguise and actually really like getting to know the people that are truly salt of the earth, you know, oftentimes blue collar, finding out about their pains and what they do and how much sacrifices they make. And I just wonder, why do we need a show like Undercover Boss? Why do we have to create this mechanism? Why can, you know, as executives, as business owners, why is that empathy just not there, you know, from the get-go, and understanding, especially when, imagine all the challenges that go on and the fights and squabbles about minimum wage. When you really get to know these people, how can you not want to help them and want to love them more?
Yeah, I'm going to sort of draw a recent example. Actually, I was working on a research project just before the pandemic out in the southern states of America, so Alabama, Georgia, and Florida, and it was a sort of project for a health client, and it was absolutely fascinating because we were going and interviewing Americans about insurance, being underinsured, about their experiences of sometimes having to like lose their house to pay for healthcare. And what was so fascinating is you'd be in a lot of these deep red politically states, and you'd be there with people with open carry handguns, with AR-15 assault rifles in the corner, with MAGA, you know, Make America Great Again hats on. And we were traveling with a film crew as well as the two of us who were researchers, and it was just so fascinating because the film crew were often saying, well, how are you able to sort of keep such an open mind about people who have got such different worldviews? And we were just like, well, this is the job. Like, you don't go in there to judge people, you go in there to understand. And actually, as researchers, and when we're training researchers in our work at Outrageous, we even say to people, like, dress in the most plain, nondescript way, almost like you're a consultant from IBM or McKinsey, so that actually when you go into people's houses, you look smart, but they don't know whether you're a IT tech engineer, whether you're a management consultant or an off-duty sort of physiotherapist, physical therapist, or sort of physician or whatever. And actually, they can then paint their own story on top of you. And I think it's just that desire to understand is absolutely critical, and a desire not to judge people, not to sort of think you're better than people, but just genuinely to understand. And that curiosity is critical.
I have another an interesting. By the way, I come prepared in the sense which is I have typically a blank piece of paper because I never know where the conversation is going to go. So
just like me, Joe.
Exactly. Well, it's a blank stare from me. But I almost wonder. If. And this is like a kind of a roundabout way of asking a follow-up question. I wonder if executives sitting in their, boardrooms, their mahogany around that mahogany table, whether they almost protect themselves by not finding out and hearing the stories of the people that are actually in the factories and the warehouses and exposed to the dangerous machinery and conditions. Because how can you not care? How can you not care if you do get to know their stories? So it's almost like a roundabout way of saying, are these people, these fat cats, in their boardrooms, are they either kind of, hiding around the table and purposefully avoiding these people that are down at the rock face because they know that if they were able to spend a bit of time, it'd be really, really hard to continue to, squeeze them in terms of their weekly wage.
Yeah, you see, again, I see it totally differently. I mean, we know that there's corporate malfeasance. We know that there are decisions that are made in boardrooms around the world that are not in the best interests of the planet, not in the best interests of shareholders or indeed of employees. But I think, again, it comes down to having empathy for those that you work with. And I think, one of the things that we often sort of talk about in our training is saying to executives and to people that we're training, look, the people that you're trying to tell the customer experience to have got 500 bits of data passing their desk each single day. They are massively overwhelmed, and it's not a sort of boohoo, cry me a river type thing, but it's a plea for precision, for clarity, for economy of communication. And I think if we can get to a situation where research is highly actionable, actually that makes and has a clear point of view, then actually that can just be so much more easy for people to use at the more senior levels, but also harder for them to ignore. And so I think it's a plea for empathy, both for customers, but also for executives and indeed for staff at all levels, and saying, how do we use understanding the human experience to make things better, Joe?
So from precision research to precision hand surfing, apparently you love
Literally,
hand surfing.
this sort of this use of Canva here is absolutely like you've said you've got a face for radio.
Let me tell you, you give me way too much credit. This is basically a PowerPoint. This is really bad PowerPoint. But apparently, this is a real photograph. You love hand surfing. You're in the ocean and you have a tiny surfboard on your hand and flippers on your feet. It's like bodyboarding, but so much closer to the water.
I just want you to like narrate my entire life, Truman Show style, Joe. So what's going to happen is like, and now Patrick is going to the school run. His child is shouting and calling him an idiot, and then Joe sort of does a narration. Could you do that for me, or is that too much? Is it too soon for me to ask?
I'm prepared to do that, but only if you tell me in truth or in a lie. Just one little tidbit about hand surfing. Why hand
Okay.
surfing and not I don't know, the other surfing? I mean,
Definitely.
there's body surfing without the flipper. There is the paddle boarding. Why hand surfing?
Okay, so it's all to do with, it's the same principle. That's the first thing to say. So whether you are basically on using your body as the board, whether you're using a giant surfboard as the board, or whether you're using a tiny hand surfing, hand plane is another name for it, then it's the same principle. It's kind of about lifting your body out of the water and being able to go through waves. The thing I love about it is that basically it's super simple to set up. We've got 2 kids. I've got absolutely fuck all time, Joe. So when I'm in the water, I need to make it count. And this, I can literally have my wetsuit on. The kids are like eating an ice cream. I've got a 10-minute block. I put the hand surfer on my thing. I waddle out backwards. That's one thing. You have to walk backwards into the surf because otherwise you're falling over and hitting your face. And then hopefully catch some good waves. But it's really, really fun. And I heartily recommend it to anyone that wants to try. And please connect with me if you're into hand surfing, because I would love to chat further about it with you.
Right, unless it's, of course, it's a complete lie, in which case you'll be like, I don't know why you're
Have
you're
nothing.
emailing me.
Exactly.
If you
You've got to be on. Go on.
No, I was going to say, if you think you've figured out which one is the lie, you just go to bit.ly/2T1L_Patrick Olszowski. And here comes the third one. And by the way, it appears that we only have 9 minutes left of this interview, because you rarely do any meetings or interviews longer than 35 minutes because life is literally too short.
Can I just ask, that Bitly link that you showed before, was that like for an anonymous sort of whistleblowing website on The Guardian or something, where people can basically like share negative stories about me, Joe? I'm just asking for a friend.
That's exactly right. You
100%.
just
Okay.
1000% exactly. So
The thing that I hate about this
35
picture,
minutes.
the thing that, yeah, 35 minutes, that's absolutely true. The thing I hate about this picture is that and this is just a bonus fourth one, is that I was once an expert on The Apprentice, but not like the adult apprentice, the junior apprentice. And I should have said this to you as well, Joe. And the thing that freaked me out so much was that these tiny entrepreneurs all turned up at a cafe in the town where I live in Brighton, but they were all in miniature suits. And I find children in suits one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen. So that was, yeah, I don't like long meetings. And in 8 minutes, I will be just literally, I won't even say goodbye. I'll just literally cut this interview dead. And you will be thanking your lucky stars that this horror show has ended for you, Joe.
So what you're trying to tell me is that exactly at 35 minutes, it's just we're going to be talking and something like.
I'm hoping it's going to be more like the sort of emergency broadcast they play during a nuclear strike.
Get your zombie preparedness package right now. Okay, so Patrick, we will go from the ridiculous to the more ridiculous. Just kidding, but I was just thinking those little mini entrepreneurs. I shall call him Mini Elon, maybe, perhaps.
Creepy. Like I hate kids
creepy
in suits.
Elon.
And I also hate, like, I even hate it at weddings when they're like, oh, here's our sort of nephew, tiny Joseph, and he's going to be in this miniature suit. And I'm like, no, it's just too wrong, Joe. It's like, fine if you're going to court, but like, don't force kids into suits. It's just that is a hill I'm prepared to die on.
Tiny Joseph. Okay. Mini Elon and Tiny Joseph. Those will be our. You'll see us on some Reddit message board as Tiny Joseph and Mini Elon. All right, but from as I said, the ridiculous to the more ridiculous. No, actually, the sublime. Let's talk a little bit about some of the. As I said, it's about hope, positivity, and optimism. And if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing.
But let's talk about board games and video games, and why you want to talk about this, and perhaps how it relates to that little thing called business and culture and productivity.
Definitely. Well, I'd just like to give a quick shout out to somebody I've got to know recently who's absolutely awesome, called Hayley. She works for an awesome agency called Pixeled Eggs. They're a sort of digital agency. And we just bonded talking about a new video game that's come out called Prince of Persia. It launched way back in like the early 90s, but there's been now a reboot of it. And we've been sort of sending each other messages saying like, how do you kill the boss on level X, or how do you get under the sort of giant neighing horse that's trying to like eat your face or whatever. I'm exaggerating, but basically been trading tips. And the thing I love about it is that it's video gaming is one of those things that you can do in snatched moments, which is important when you've got two kids. It's something that you can take it really transports you to another world. And I think that the sort of relevance for the world of work is that often I think we spend so much time at work being bored and therefore under engaged emotionally. And if we can take some of that playfulness and spirit and joy that comes from board games or video games and apply it into the world of work, it's why I say our work is a bit like TEDx meeting Ted Lasso for a coffee. Actually, people do learn more. And actually, it's how do we help people have fun so that they not only retain it, but they also drop the barriers. And I know you were saying about psychological safety. It's critical that people feel able to collaborate with others. And I think board games, video games often teach you that element of collaboration as well.
First of all, I have to say, I really love, you can imagine if after 600 plus episodes of doing the show, of meeting people from different walks of life and aspects of business, what happens, one of my favorite quotes actually is Diane Arbus, the photographer, who said, it's what I've never seen before that I recognize. And so I love hearing things that I've never heard before. And I love this concept of snatched moments. If I wrote it down correctly, and I was thinking to myself, what are some snatched moments at work where we can actually recognize and reward ourselves and take that little brief moment and give back to ourselves, just like a video game or a board game might have given to us at home.
And it's interesting you mentioned Diane Arbus. Long back, I used to work as a freelance photographer, and one of the greats of street photography, Cartier-Bresson, always talked about the sort of the idea of capturing a moment in time through photography. And so I love this idea of making the most of those gaps, those moments between other moments. It's why I can't really sort of tolerate long meetings or long drawn out sort of events, because it just becomes so unplayful and unjoyful. And I think, to answer your question specifically, Joe, what can we do? How can we find those moments? I think it's firstly we don't always have to be busy. Secondly, I think letting yourself experience things in 4 or 5D, if that doesn't sound too pretentious. So how do we smell things? How do we feel the breath of air on our face? How do we listen to music? How do we engage in touch with our loved ones? A lot of us are working from home now. Do we find time to just hug a loved one or pet a pet? Like, all of these little things can bring joy at work. And I think in a training capacity, a lot of people we find bring a lot of sort of unrecognized boredom and trauma to training, not trauma with a capital T, but with a sort of small t. And it's like, how do we just help people drop those barriers a bit? How do we help them focus on their stories and collaborate with others? And in fact, as Vanilla Ice said it, how do we get them to stop, collaborate, and listen? Ice is back with a brand new invention, Joe. Someone grab a hold of me tightly, flow like a hawk, real daily and nightly. Will it ever stop? Yo, I don't know. That's what we need. A little bit more Vanilla Ice in our life.
I was just about to mute you because no.
Why? That was the best bit. If that doesn't make it into the highlights reel for like the entire 600 shows, Joe.
You know what? If if I really had a staff right now, you would have a dum 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 dum
Would I?
dum 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 vanilla ice.
Yeah, I mean, I think Vanilla
I
Ice
can
may.
do that for you.
Can you?
Ice, baby.
I,
I
all
mean,
right,
I can.
stop. Collaborate and listen. Okay, should we do the whole thing? I can do the Bartman as well if you want.
Yeah. Did you say Bartman or Fartman? I don't know.
I can do both.
No,
But what
listen,
about
I'll bring it back. I'll bring it
Sad.
back because I love what you're saying, and I jotted down on my jot pad, as we often have, as all talk show hosts do have, the word corporate mindfulness, the ability to be mindful at the office. It just seems like something that is an unmet need, and I think, and as you said, there are the moments and the moments between the moments, right? There's the blank space. There are these moments when you can just pause and stop and reflect and introspect and slow down. And maybe that's all we need right now when we are in such danger of burning out, and of fatiguing because of all this muck and mire and distraction and noise around us. So I really do want to kind of emphasize this, because corporate mindfulness, it appears that it is definitely something that I don't know, someone should start a business that focuses on that.
It's so important, and I know entrepreneurs, for example, that are working in the sphere of sort of touch hunger, for example. So people are not interacting physically with other people as much as they did before, and they're looking to innovate in that space. I know people that are innovating in the sort of workplace disputes and sort of conflict mediation, and how do we interact better with each other at work.
Well,
I know
that's
people
interesting.
that are working in the sort of anti-radicalization space, and saying, like, there's so much polarity between Republican, Democrat, between Conservative and Labour, between Brexit and Remain voters, and it's like, how do we as brands and as organizations start to bridge those gaps? And I think, for me, the starting point is always that, what I said right at the beginning, which is not saying who the fuck is Tom Arnold, but is actually saying, how do we honor and respect the stories of individuals? And we do that by the quality of our listening. Like, if we can listen really, really intently with all of our senses, then actually we can more deeply understand. And if we more deeply understand, then we can have deeper empathy.
Well, I was just thinking, if you take this idea of touch hunger, which seems like definitely an HR violation, and you combine it with board games, I mean, it's pretty obvious. It becomes the Hunger Games. So, thank you guys. I'll be around all week.
Which character from the Hunger Games would you be, Joe?
I would be Clarice. No, wait, that's a different hunger as well. I don't know. I don't remember any of them. I'd probably be Woody Harrelson's character, because he's the only one I can remember at this point.
Yeah,
I
hey,
just don't want to die.
No,
I'd prefer.
You'd be like the enabler. You'd be like sort of supporting the sort of combatants in the thing, and like helping them sort of.
I'd be Donald Sutherland. By the way, has Donald Sutherland ever been cast in any movie where he's not the bad guy?
Well, I was saying this actually to some American clients the other day, that basically Brits only ever get cast as like either the traitorous villain or basically as the bad boyfriend. So we never get cast as anything else. We're always
or the
like
secret agent.
Yeah, whatever. Like, but then I only ever think about Rowan Atkinson as Johnny English. That I can't really move beyond that, Joe.
This is true. Well, at least you're not being called Mr. Bean. So I'm going to bring us back to sublime for a second, away from ridiculous. Although, at this point, I think we should just accept the fact that the ship has sailed.
Yeah, so, who could tell the difference?
Who can? This is an interesting something I wanted to ask you, which is, you talk about the importance of, there's levity, there's humor, there's a little bit of irreverence or deprecation or self-deprecation, all of these things. And just to be very, very clear, I wholeheartedly
subscribe. I'm picking up what you're putting down. I'm buying what you're selling. And yet we live, going back to psychological safety, we're living in a world where people are so afraid, goddamn afraid, to open up their mouths, say the wrong thing, make a joke that's going to come back to haunt them, that's going to, that's going to be a one-way path out of town. How do we bring it back? Have we gone too far, Patrick? How do we bring it back? How do we create a culture that is both safe and also just a little bit chilled? Because, a wise man once told me life is so short.
And that was not my words. Those were probably words that I saw on a dentist's waiting poster. Like, success, sometimes you're just not trying, or failure, sometimes you're just not trying hard enough.
1-800, call a denture. Okay, but carry on.
No, I can't precisely address both sides of that question, Joe. I really can't. It's too big for what we're talking about here, and I could say a load of things that would be that wouldn't work. But what I can say is that one of the things that we've found is a really good leveler. We bring together cross-functional teams, often inside large, mostly US based businesses, and often the sort of culture in some of these businesses, people have described it a bit like being in a sort of episode of Game of Thrones. So people come, they're worried about saying the wrong thing, they're worried about being called out, they may have been to training before that was quite punitive in the way in which it was actually run. And one of the first things that we do is we just get people to and it was something you said in your intro, to share their story about, not about what they do, but why they do it. And people, when you get a group of 9 or 10 people, all pretty senior people, but just people that are not trained in research, coming together at the beginning of a 6-week experience, and the first thing they share with a group is why they do what they do, not what they do, you suddenly open up a space for that sort of values-led connection. And I think for us, that's one of the key levelers that sets a sort of a firm foundation that allows people, irrespective of their day-to-day reality. And some of the people in the businesses that we support are going through incredible hardship, over policing, health inequalities, financial hardship, all these sorts of things, even while working for massive businesses. But if we can start by honoring their stories and giving them a space where they're heard by their colleagues, actually that can create a space where all of them start with an equality there from the outset.
There is a very famous saying, and it's a very known saying, which is people don't care much you know until they know how much you care. And I think part of what you're saying is exactly that, which is this ability when you get to know, when you understand. In fact, my daughter went to school at which in the US would say college, college or university for our 1.2 billion international viewers that we have. And
Joe, I just got to say on that, my son is obsessed with Toy Story, and he basically, because Andy, one of the characters in Toy Story, is going to college, he thinks there's only one college that all children go to. So he's just saying, he's now 7, and he keeps on saying, when am I going to go to the college? He thinks there's only like a single one. So
yeah, well, these days I don't mean to brag, but I didn't go to Harvard, so it's not that one. I believe it's that one. I believe it's not that one, the college. But, at Washington University in St. Louis, the motto is know every student by name and by story. And, it's part of the whole Midwest culture. It's part of this idea, a friendlier, more neighborly approach, as opposed to maybe some of the schools, in the city, whether it's a Cornell or in New York, like the more competitive schools, maybe the more Ivy League schools, much more intense, much more cutthroat, perhaps arguably. But I love that idea, know everyone in your company by their name and by story. It makes it really, really hard, not to respect them and not to have a little bit more empathy for them and not to promote a little bit more safety for them in that environment, including but not limited to sometimes people say dumb things.
Exactly. And I love that. And, it's where I'm broadcasting from today is basically Brighton here in the UK. and I often describe Brighton like the Portland, Oregon of the UK. So it's the LGBT capital, although I know Manchester might disagree. We're down by the sea. We've got lots of craft brewers, and every time the far right musters, those idiots here in Brighton, the whole city comes out and opposes them. And at our other child's school, the school motto, similar to what you just said, which I absolutely loved, is be curious, not judgmental. And I think that idea about always being interested in other people, like it's a bit like this conversation, like in some ways, and I loved the briefing that you gave me, but also you gave me nothing, Joe, and so I had no idea really what to expect. Thank God I had no idea what to expect, because I think
because you would never come on otherwise, right?
No, but the quality of conversation would have been so different if we tried to like workshop this and like sort of script it out and all that sort of thing, whereas actually just having more of a free flowing jazz discussion where we're just kind of riffing off each other and exploring serious and non-serious and jumping
It is
back.
like jazz, right? Bad
Yeah.
jazz. No, I'm joking.
Well, exactly. I mean, like two white dudes doing jazz. I mean, that's just going to not be, particularly given my musical sensibilities, Joe. I like listening to it, but I have been told that I have the voice of a fallen angel in terms of my singing voice. So I think the sooner we can stay away from experimental jazz nights.
And I have the face of a fallen angel, one that literally has splattered on the pavement, which is
you are beautiful no matter what they say, Joe, and that is, I genuinely mean that. It's your spirit that I have so like enjoyed getting to know. Even
thank you.
You've had an extra 11 minutes, for fuck's sake. I mean, seriously,
you said you're beautiful.
You're doing something right.
You're coming up with words of another song, and it actually makes me think, which is why I showed Ivan Pollard at the beginning doing a little bit of Monty Python. But you remember that wonderful scene from I guess it's maybe is it The Meaning of Life or Life of Brian, when no, I think I think it is it's probably The Meaning of Life when the king says to his son, "One day, son, all this will be yours." And he goes, "What? The curtains?" And he goes, "No, you idiot." And he goes, "But I don't want the kingdom. I just want to sing." And then, and then the music goes, "Right, stop that. Anyway.
No, but it's remarkable though, isn't it? Like sort of like, so we get some new just a riff on the idea of curtains. So we get some new blinds here, Joe. And I asked our son, I was like, so he's 7, so I wasn't sure what sort of, like, at the moment he's got like a blackout blind from IKEA. It's pretty bleak. It's sort of got a bit of a Cold War vibe about it, and it's broken, so we need to get them replaced. And I said, so what sort of blinds do you want? And I said, what color would you like? And he goes, I just want a rainbow one. And I was like, that was the last thing I would expect. And that is also what I love about just sort of research and that curiosity thing, is you think like, oh, if I make my thing look like an Apple iPhone, people are going to want to buy it. No, people want it to look like an emoji unicorn doing a poop, with wings on it. That's what they want to buy. And actually, you never really know what consumers want until you both ask them, but then also do the crucial work of triangulating beneath the surface and trying to intuit and triangulate with all the other bits of knowledge and information you have to work out what they really want, not just what they say they want. And I think, when I heard our son saying, I just want it to be sort of rainbow, like my heart was so light, Joe. It was really quite a beautiful moment. But it could just be me, like with
although
my,
there are some members of Manchester or Brighton might not have liked that color. Well, you see, there's lots of colors around me and behind me too in the very busy wallpaper. Benjamin Moore, I think, or Sherwin Benjamin Moore, I don't know, one of the paint companies, they always come up with a color of the year, a Pantone of the year. So I'm thinking for 2024, maybe the color of the year will be Cold War black. It's a version of black. It's
a version of conservative shit show brown,
conservative
which is
chic.
Conservative sheath, which is basically the for all discerning people never fuck a Tory and never will. That's just a public sector and a public service announcement from your friends at
Right, I'm
Outrageous
just
Insight.
updating YouTube. This will be an episode E-rated explicit, but no problems with that.
I did actually check in with, like, just so we're clear for the audience, we did actually have the consent discussion before, though, Joe. I did say, like, religion, politics, and calling.
I said
the
yes,
Tories a bunch of
please.
cunts. Like, am I allowed to say those? And you were like,
my response was yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah, danke.
I want to go back to our mutual friend, Mr. Ted Lasso, and normally
Are we really doing this?
I don't. Well,
are
no,
we doing this?
no, I'm going to spare you from it. But this
Oh
actually is. This
Thank
actually is.
Christ.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
Okay,
this is a Ted Lasso quote. I mean, he actually has two. The other quote I liked, which is, there are two buttons that he never presses. One is the snooze button, and one is the panic button. But this is another one, which is the taking on a challenge is a lot like riding a horse. If you're comfortable while you're doing it, you're probably doing it wrong. And, you know, it made me think about the workplace again, which is, you know, obviously something that you specialize in, which is we create these standards and we create these expectations oftentimes that can be so high and so unfair. And often we are our own worst enemy. We're the hardest and the harshest on ourselves. We don't take the time, those moments, you know, those moments to reflect. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we have today, whether it's working in general, whether it's working at home, and what can we learn from Ted Lasso to help us overcome them?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think the first thing is, and I was actually just running an office hours sort of group discussion last night for some US clients, and you know, at the end, I just said, look, this week as we're going into our work, let's just try and be courageous. Let's actually try, and when we see something that's wrong, not just sort of sit there and fester, but let's actually speak up about it. Let's use our power, let's use our voice, let's use our privilege to basically call these things out and try and get the organization to do better. And I do think one of the things that I loved about Ted Lasso as a show was just the simplicity of the message, you know, the sort of ripped up sign that said believe. You know, it's like, you don't need to overcomplicate things. You need to get people to feel things. So that's the first thing. It's like an appeal to their heart rather than to the head. I think, you know, second thing is, it's such a funny show, and actually, if you make people sort of feel and have a good time, they do learn more. So I'm going to let you into a trade secret, which is at the end of our training course, every training course we run, we always, just as people have just done their final goodbyes and have talked about their have talked about what the course has meant to them and what they've learned and other teammates that they've appreciated, we always play a song, and the song is always Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, if you leave me now, you take away the biggest part of me. And then it descends into a disco, complete with disco ball and strobe lights and LED glow sticks, and we have everyone up on their feet dancing. Often I'm singing at the same time, Joe, and people look at me like, how can this not be a safety at work issue? How can this not be a workplace violation issue? And the reason is because it's actually fun, and it's not pushing people to a place where it's actually anyone is excluded. It's just lighthearted. And I think that's the third thing, is I think one of the sort of themes that I always took from Ted Lasso, that we've taken from Ted Lasso, is that actually people want to go through a trial by fire as a group. They might moan and grouse about it at the time. They might say, this is hellish. And we, for example, get people to recruit a series of consumers, run a series of interviews with those consumers on Zoom or WebEx or whatever, then get live feedback from us, and then get live feedback from their other teammates on the course. And everyone is like, God, this is absolutely shit scary. I hate doing this. But at the end, everyone comes out saying, that was an incredible experience and I learned so much more. And the way you do that is by saying, we're not going to criticize the person. In fact, when we give feedback, we even talk in the third person. So we'll say, the interviewer, when they ask this question, ask the question in a leading way. The interviewer might want to think about doing it in this way. And so we depersonalize it and don't make it about criticizing an individual, but we make it about a group work that is about improving performance.
So when they turn around and, so let me see if I can do this correctly. The arsehole interviewer, when he was asking one of his dumbass questions, not that, right?
No, you were exactly right. No, the first one was right, Joe. You were 100% on it. I think when you said dumbass, I'd probably just use replace it with fucking idiot. That would be my feedback that I'd like you to just reflect on, Joe.
What I will reflect on, in all seriousness, is, you know, it's something that I remember saying almost at the beginning of my career, which was this idea of whether we call it the internal customer, which is the employee, but ultimately, when you think about the people that you work with, to me, respecting them professionally is not good enough. You have to respect them personally. You need to respect them personally, or they need to earn that respect. Same thing like liking them. Life is so short, and you spend more of your waking hours with your work colleagues. How would you want to be in that environment and not like them and respect them personally and professionally? Anything less than that, it's just a waste of time and a waste of space, regardless of the productivity. That's what I've always felt. And I feel like you're promoting that, not only in terms of the what, but the why, the fun, the irreverent, the approach, but also there is not even a latent, there is a very clear aspect of respect, and says, hey, what do they say? You know, don't take it personally. Don't hate the player, hate the game, is what I was trying to say.
Yeah, I totally hear that. And I think, you know, sometimes even if you disagree with somebody incredibly vehemently, the key is, can you find a shared sort of value, or a shared sort of passion, or a shared story that you can connect over? And you know, some of the stories that I've heard in 20 years of doing research, you know, will always stick with me. You know, and it's for example the man who had $2 million worth of medical care that had completely bankrupted him and his family, and he was then living in the basement of of his parents' house, you know, because he basically lost all his money as a result of healthcare. I'm also now really pleased that I've locked the door here into the office, because I do have a sort of tiny intruder, hopefully in a suit, who's trying to break in, Joe, as well at this moment. So
Wait, is it little Joe, or is it
or is it Tiny Trump? What? No, Mini Me, stop breaking down the door. No,
and speaking of fear, but you know, it's really interesting to me, because workplace culture, and I think we'll kind of, you know, we'll wind it down as I've stolen 25 minutes of your life excessively that you will never get back again.
I've gladly shared them with you, Joe. I had no idea what to expect, and
I've wonderfully received
thin slice
them.
of heaven. It's been a thin slice of heaven.
So I'm going to go back to this idea. Thank you. Very, very thin slice of heaven, and a dollop of hell, my friend. No, I'm kidding. But the aspect as well, we spoke about earlier, or I spoke about earlier, about there's fear, you know, of saying the wrong thing. But one thing that has changed, I think, thankfully, is this idea that we don't, maybe we should fear a little bit, but we don't fear our boss maybe as we used to. There is an element of running and ruling and leading and managing by fear that appears that ship again has sailed. Where do you see hierarchy basically landing up in a corporate world and a corporate culture, in terms of how to manage, how to lead, how to collaborate when there is seniority, and yet, more importantly, the power of collaboration and camaraderie might also prevail?
Yeah, again, I mean, we could have an entire hour's podcast on that, Joe. I think my only observation, comes back to this idea that execs, particularly in large US sort of Fortune 1000, Fortune 500 businesses, have a relatively short corporate lifespan. It's probably just under 3 years for a chief marketing officer, maybe a bit longer for a chief financial officer, or the people that we tend to get brought in by chief people officer, chief HR officer, perhaps a slightly longer tenure. So the key is, how can we, as teammates, as colleagues, I'm using the word wrongly, but basically as sort of more junior staff members, help them deliver the sort of the notes that they're trying to do, and how can we help them to deliver for the customer? And for me, and for us at Outrageous, it always starts with, can we understand a sliver of the truth of humanity and of customers and the lives that they're experiencing at this moment, so we can be of service to them? And I know you had Priscilla McKinney on a few weeks ago, and her concept of always, being helpful, always being of service. I think if we see marketing not as a shrill, barking activity where we're trying to force our ideas onto people, but instead see it as a dialogue and a discussion and a way of understanding and listening to people and having empathy for them, then we can be of service. And maybe at some stage down the future, those people will reward our businesses with money. And that really is where we see it, and where we see insight research fitting in, Joe. So
what I really hear from you as we hit the hour mark and we turn into pumpkins, see what I just did there, is humanity. Humanity will always prevail. And by the way, Ruben is on LinkedIn. He said, as a Navy SEAL, I took for granted getting 16 guys all focused on the same thing at the same time, making it happen. That is why Navy SEALs are so remarkable. But it is wonderful when everyone can be on the same page, when everyone is rowing in the same direction, a little bit of a naval theme there as well. Patrick, it has been a pleasure and a privilege. When we edit this down, yes, there will only be 30 seconds of usable content. But
what, you mean I've given you 59 minutes 30 and you're going to literally cut it down to 30 seconds?
No, I'm not.
This is a fucking travesty.
No, I'm not. Well, actually, we'll reduce that down to 25 seconds. But I will tell you, forget about TEDx. Forget about TEDx meeting Ted Lasso. How about Ted Lasso meets Chuck Norris?
You are Chuck Norris approved.
And we will be back very soon. But before we do that, I would be remiss, and I would be, it's in the writer, it's in your the contract that we signed where you asked for green M&Ms in the green room. Please connect with Patrick on LinkedIn. There are a lot of vowels in there, and his last name is a very high Scrabble score. Please check out his outrageous company, outrageousinsight.com. And remember, like, life is short. You may as well work with the right people and have, my first boss, he said, have fun, make money. I changed that to have fun, do good, make money. I will be back soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.